Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for Reviving and Restoring Rural Retail, Exploring Retail Models for Rural Areas, a webinar hosted by the Johns Hopkins Center for Livable Future. My name is Ann Palmer, and I'm a program director at the center and part of the Food Policy Networks project. In the room with me are Rachel Santo and Karen Bassarab. We're delighted to have with us this afternoon Isabelle Busenitz, Rial Carver from Kansas State University, Jenni Georgeson from Wholesome Food Co-op, and Gloria Kellerhals from the Catawba Farm and Food Coalition. Before we begin the presentation, I want to briefly go over a few features of Zoom. That's the video conferencing and webinar system that we're using today. So throughout the presentation, all the attendees will be muted. If you have any question at any point during the conversation, you can type it in the Q&A box, and you can scroll to the bottom of your screen, and that should provide you the Q&A box. There's a floating toolbar. We will reserve time at the end to address most of the questions, but we may also address those that are relevant to specific focus points during the discussion. If you're having any technical issues with sound, please send us a message via the chat box. That's also located on the floating toolbar. You can also use the chat box to share comments or resources. We will be recording the discussion today, and we'll share it with everyone that registered in the coming week. As mentioned before, this webinar is being hosted by the Center for a Livable Future, an interdisciplinary center located at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Our work focuses on the intersection of diet, environment, food production, and public health. The Food Policy Networks project is one of our projects, and the goal of the project is to build capacity of food system stakeholders to reform local, state, regional, and tribal food systems through effective public policy. We do that through training, sharing best practices, networking with other food policy groups and leaders, and developing and providing food policy resource materials. If you aren't familiar with the project, I urge you to check out our website and sign up for the listserv to hear about future webinars. Today, we're going to talk about rural food retail models. Food access is the #1 topic that food policy councils work on, and food retail is frequently mentioned as one way to address food access issues. For a variety of reasons, it is especially challenging to develop food retail models in rural areas. We put a call out on the listserv for projects that are doing just that, creating models to improve food access. So today we're going to hear from the Kansas State University's Rural Grocery Initiative, which provides resources to help sustain and enhance independently owned rural grocery stores. The initiative was established in 2008 and is housed within the Center for Engagement and Community Development. The Rural Grocery Initiative assists communities and citizens to strengthen rural grocery operations and improve access to healthy food. They believe that supporting rural grocery stores is important because they provide economic development through jobs and by contributing to the local tax base, act as community hubs for community members to gather and connect, and serve as essential sources for healthy food options. Isabelle Busenitz serves as the Technical Assistance Coordinator for the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative. Isabelle uses her background in chemistry and human nutrition to fiddle with recipes in the kitchen to maximize their health benefits while still passing her kids' taste tests. She enjoys spending time outside in nature with her husband and kids in their rural home in Tecumseh, Kansas. Rial Carver focuses on initiatives that improve healthy food access primarily through the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative and Rural Grocery Initiative. Her experience includes working as a sustainability coordinator at Virginia Tech Dining Services. She recently completed a Master's of Regional and Community Planning at Kansas State University, and she and her husband enjoy exploring the outdoors and community gardening at the Manhattan Community Gardens. We're also going to hear from Jenni Georgeson. Jenni's a wife and mother of 4 beautiful children. She's a local food enthusiast who's been involved with Wholesome Harvest Co-op since the beginning planning stages in August of 2017. Jenni worked hard to help the co-op incorporate and has served in the co-op's board of directors since the co-op formed in April 2018. She is currently serving as the general manager of Wholesome Harvest Co-op, a retail grocery store in Frostburg, Maryland. And finally, we'll hear from Gloria Kellerhals. Gloria is the founder and co-chair of the Catawba Farm and Food Coalition in Chester, South Carolina. She and others are working to create lasting, sustainable local food system in Chester, Fairfield, Lancaster, Union, York, and Catawba Indian Nation. Gloria is an award-winning retired executive recruiter for Wall Street firms and a successful small business owner for 30 years. Gloria and her team have built a unique regional agribusiness incubator in downtown Chester, which includes the Catawba Fresh Market and online retail platform, as well as other food and ag-related activities. So that's it for me. So I'm going to turn it over to Isabelle and Rial to get us started. Rial, not Rial. Sorry. After all that, Isabelle and Rial, take it away with your slides. Are you guys on mute?
Can you all hear us?
Yes. Now we can. Yeah.
I think they just unmuted them.
Are you all able to hear us now?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started. We will share our screen. Second here.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you able to see those slides? Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started here and talk a little bit about the Rural Grocery Initiative and how that relates to some of the rural food retail models that we are seeing in Kansas. Thank you for your introduction. We're excited to be here and to be sharing some of the work that we're doing here at K-State. So as was already stated, I'm Rial Carver, and I have Isabelle Busenitz here across the table from me. We're just going to talk briefly about some of the work that we do broadly, and then hone in on some of the specific models that we're seeing in rural Kansas in particular, and share some of those. So first up is just a quick overview of the Rural Grocery Initiative. As was mentioned already, the Rural Grocery Initiative was founded in 2008, and we came out of some listening sessions that happened across the state where rural communities were asked what are some of the big challenges that rural Kansas is facing. And the viability and sustainability of the rural grocery store was something that kept coming up, and was the formation of this Rural Grocery Initiative. We feel like rural grocery stores are important because they are economic drivers in rural communities. Some Kansas research that was done shows that rural grocery stores typically have about 17 jobs, which is a mix of full and part-time jobs. It also showed that rural grocery stores contribute to the local tax base. So both property and sales tax dollars are contributed by the rural grocery store. They also act as community hubs. These are places where people are gathering for coffee. They're places where people are learning about what's going on in the community, places where people can see each other and build social capital. And they're also usually an essential and sometimes the only option for healthy food in rural communities. And so they can be really important as far as the health and the health of our communities and the food options that are available for our communities. We have a fact sheet that's listed at the bottom.
Isabella, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're getting some feedback in the chat that the slides are pretty small. Can you make them full screen?
Let's see here. They are full screen right now. I'm not sure why. I'll just restart this share and see if that helps.
Okay.
Okay. Optimize for full screen.
Nice. Okay, does that seem to be any better?
Yeah, some people are seeing them full screen now, it appears.
Okay, we're good.
Good.
Sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll continue. So I was just going to point out that we have a fact sheet linked at the bottom of our slides that details a little bit more of what was just talking about. So feel free to look at that on our website and you get some more information. Okay, so what do we do? What does the Rural Grocery Initiative do? A lot of our work is communities and grocery store owners calling us and asking us questions, whether it's related to distribution or being authorized for WIC and SNAP at their retail, at their grocery store. So we're often talking with communities and answering their questions. And these are communities across the country, so not just in Kansas. So if some of you all are interested in just learning about different options, we'd be happy to speak with you, and our contact information is in this slide or in this PowerPoint. We also maintain a list of rural grocery stores, which helps us to talk a little bit about what's going on in Kansas broadly. We have the Rural Grocery Toolkit on our website, which can be found at ruralgrocery.org. And this includes resources for both new grocery stores as well as already established stores. So there's information on what sort of licensing is required, as well as information on marketing and other items. We work with community and national partners across the country and across the state, as I mentioned earlier. And then another main initiative that's in our program is called the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Some broad information on what this looks like in Kansas. So we have about 814 total grocery stores in all of Kansas, 237 of which are independent stores. So that filters out the Dillons and Kroger's and Costco's and that sort of thing, and gets us to more of what we are working with, not entirely, but more of what we're working with. And it makes up about 65% of all of the conventional and superette stores in the state, which is a classification that really just means it's a traditional full-service grocery store. The main difference between conventional and superette stores is the sales volume. So conventional stores traditionally have more than $2 million in sales a year, versus superette stores are usually below that. But so what this tells us is that a lot of the independent stores look like traditional grocery stores that you may think of. So then when you think about where are these stores? In Kansas, a vast majority of the cities in Kansas have a population of 20,000 or less. And then when you look at where the grocery stores are, about 83% of the independent grocery stores are in populations of 20,000 or less. And then when you look at cities of 5,000 or less, it's about 74% of all the independent stores. So we're looking at small towns in our program, mostly under 5,000 population. We also look at, with some of our database, we look at collecting information on stores that have closed. That's a question that we hear often. If this is an issue in rural America, what are the numbers around it? So here is some of the data that we've collected. We found that it is a challenging number to acquire. We have used the Kansas Department of Agriculture as a resource to collect this information. I don't know if that would be the way to do it in every state, but that's the way that we've been able to get consistent data. And we also know that while about 54 stores have closed between 2008 and 2018, we also know that about the same number have closed and then reopened. So those are also numbers that we keep track of in our office. So I'm going to turn it over to Isabelle, and she's going to talk a little bit more about specific ownership models.
Great, thank you, Rial. Well, what I'm going to talk about is just looking at what we see when we talk to communities in Kansas, but also in the region. And as you might expect, we see many of those stores being a traditional ownership model, whether that is a sole proprietorship or some type of a corporation or limited liability type of operation. These are the things that make up most of the owner operators that we see. But today, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about some of the other models. And the reason why we think that this is important to investigate is because these traditional models, as they reach the end of the life of that business in the community, perhaps the owners are looking to retire, they're having difficulty finding somebody to come in and take over. So the succession planning is a real challenge because there is not, to our evidence, a large pool of folks who are ready to step in and run a grocery store. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of these other models and how they work in various places that we've seen. And I'd like to point you to the bottom of the slide where we have business organization ownership model case studies, and those are found on the Rural Grocery Toolkit in the resources area. So that would be a great place to get more information on what I'm going to talk about today. One of the models that I'm going to talk about is where a community, we call it a community supported enterprise. These are various levels of community support of this business in a community. And this first one is where the ownership of the building and facilities is taken on by the city. And we have an example of this on the website, and the town is Little River, Kansas. And in this case, what has happened is the city has purchased the building and the equipment, and they're able to find unique ways to get funding so that they can upgrade the equipment and lower the overhead or make that operating cost lower for the operators of that business because the city now owns the building. One of the things that's great about this, we think, is that if these owners decide that the business owner decides that they are ready to move on or retire, then that asset stays with the community because the city still owns that building, and then they can search for someone else who can come in and take on running that operation. Another way that communities are looking about thinking about this is having a municipality operate the store as a utility. And this is something that we've heard interest in from several communities where the city would run that grocery store as a utility, so the people who work there, the employees, would actually be city employees, and they would have benefits and things that are better salaries that are sometimes a challenge to groceries to offer to their employees. And in a community supported enterprise like this, where it operates as a utility, the primary goal of this is as a public good for the community. So the motivation is not entirely profit. Obviously, it has to be able to be sustained, but it's a focus on what is good for the community. And it provides that healthy food access for the people living in it. When Rial was talking earlier, she said that we provide technical assistance, and we get calls from all over the country about communities who are looking for ways to sustain their grocery stores in their communities. And one of the ways that they can do that is by making improvements to their store or developing a new store for an area that has lost one and they need a new facility. And we often point them toward the USDA's Rural Development Office, and there are several, they have a lot of different loan and grant programs, but the ones that we most frequently refer about are the Rural Economic Development Loan and Grant, which can be accessed by communities of 50,000 or less. And then Rural Energy for America is a great way for a community to fund a store for energy improvements, energy efficiency, or sustainable energy items such as solar or wind. Those are funding that can come through that program. And then for those communities who are looking at that utility function for running the store as a utility, the Community Facilities Loan and Grant Program might be an option, and that's something that is still yet to be explored. That program is not available to for-profit entities, but they would loan directly and have grants directly for communities or nonprofits or federally recognized Indian tribes. And there are different requirements for the size of community for all of these. So this is just something where we point people to this and hook them up with the right resources so that they can get that information. One of the things I wanted to do is take a moment just to show you what you'll find when you go into that toolkit and you look at those ownership models. And we didn't talk much today about some of the other options, such as the nonprofit model, or we even have heard of schools running a grocery store, even though that might not be a long-term option. That is something that has been done in the community. And when you go into the website, you find this fact sheet, you'll see that there are different areas that you can look at, such as the characteristics of the model and the different types of challenges that people will face, like as in on the nonprofit model, how will they establish that 501c3 status and the challenges that come with that. And then on the right side, you'll see the benefits that are listed for this, especially tax incentives for the nonprofit model. But then there's another couple of pages that go behind that actually have a case study that gives you more of a feel for what this would look like in a community, and we think those are valuable to share. I'm going to turn it back over to Rial.
Great. Thank you, Isabelle. So after over 10 years of providing technical assistance, doing research, being a institutional support for rural grocery stores, we brought on the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative project, which is a public-private partnership where there are funds as well as technical assistance for projects that increase access to healthy food in low resource and underserved areas. And our office provides the technical assistance as well as eligibility review for that program. So it's really the experience that we've had over the last decade that allowed us to be positioned to be a part of this Kansas Healthy Food Initiative. It was seeded by the Kansas Health Foundation, and we worked on projects across the state and in urban, rural, small towns, for farmers market projects as well as grocery store projects. So this has really widened our scope and allowed us to work not just in the rural part of Kansas, but also in some urban areas as well. And I just wanted to point out that one of the main initiatives that the Rural Grocery Initiative and our office, the Center for Engagement and Community Development at Kansas State University, puts on is the National Rural Grocery Summit, which is scheduled for next June. It'll be in Manhattan, Kansas, and we'd love for you all to join us. This is the save the date, but you can find more information on ruralgrocery.org. And lastly, here's some contact information. I'm sure that Karen and Ann will pass this information out as well, but we'd love to hear from you if you have any questions after this presentation. Thank you.
Go again.
Thanks, Rial and Isabelle. And Jenni, we're going to turn it over to you.
All right. Can you hear me still? Awesome. So, hi. My name is Jenni Georgeson. I am just going to go through mostly this list of questions that I've been asked and hopefully get some good information. Thank you for the other presenters. That was awesome, and I will be contacting you personally very shortly. So first, I want to talk a little bit about our business. I work with Wholesome Harvest Co-op, and we are in Frostburg, Maryland. So I didn't even know Frostburg existed until I moved here in August 2017. It is a small town in the very western part of Maryland. And we have about 8,000 to 9,000 people year round. And then we have Frostburg State University adds over 5,000 students So when they're not here, there is a noticeable difference. We still fit into the under 20,000 category that they were talking about earlier. And so I'm just going to read this. We are a cooperatively owned grocery store in downtown Frostburg, and we are committed to our mission, which is expanding market opportunities for local farmers, increasing access to affordable locally grown food, and generating jobs and revenue streams for our local economy. So we line up with people across the country who have these same missions and values. Now we got started. Actually, there was an owner of an LLC, also named Wholesome Harvest, and she operated from 2016 to 2017, and then needed to find someone to take over. And so she asked the community if we wanted to start a cooperative. And we started meeting in August of 2017, and turns out we did want to. So we took the next year planning and developing, and we actually formed as a business in April of 2018 as a cooperative, and opened our retail store in September of 2018. So that's a little bit about us and our store. I'll share our website at the end so you can check it out a little bit more. Personally, I am the general manager of Wholesome Harvest Co-op, and so my role has been pretty fluid and dynamic over the last 2 years as we meet a lot of challenges and changes, and try to even decide what we need and how to fulfill those goals and objectives. I will also mention that we were able to secure funding through the USDA local food promotion program, and so that's been a major grant, a major benefit to us as we hire and train personnel and work on several initiatives, especially community education for why healthy food is important and how to connect people to especially locally grown food here. So, okay, what else? What is working and what problems are we addressing? So I'd say some of the major things that are working is that we are developing community relationships. We've been able to start, and even there was awareness because of the first LLC of us needing to address being a food desert and not having great access here. And so we have just developed a lot of great community relationships with people who care about where their food comes from and how to increase access across the board. And then specifically developing relationships with our local farmers and expanding opportunities for them. And so we literally started by going to the farmers markets, meeting all those people, having them come. They were some of our first members of our cooperative. And then working with, there is a farmers cooperative in the county next to us, Garrett Growers. And so between that, we've been able to establish, those were some of our first like buying and vending relationships with our local farmers. And that helped us in the beginning, especially, and now, because we're able to really adjust the volumes. Unlike like major grocery chains, we can order just a little bit of something, although it takes a lot of coordination because it's from a lot of different places that we're ordering just a little bit. So, and then, so expanding markets for farmers, and we have been able to increase access to local food. I mean, because we have a retail space. And so before it was very hard for anyone to access outside of farmers market hours, like local food, and Wholesome Harvest was the only store in Frostburg, really. And so we wanted to maintain a retail space where people could come and have access to healthier foods. And then for increasing the revenue streams and offering jobs, we have been able to hire, right now we have 6 employees at the co-op. Some are very part-time, and I am a full-time manager, mostly working from home. And then we have 2 cashiers, and we have 3 staff members in our kitchen. So I would say the other thing, we have been able to run our commercial kitchen since January of this year, and just having, being able to incorporate local foods and healthy foods and have vegan and vegetarian options in our community is different. It's different, and I would call it a success. And I hope that it continues. People are interested in it, and they're willing to eat better if it's prepared for them already. So including myself. So that has been a success. Yeah, raising hands. So those are some of our successes. I feel like our challenges are very similar, very understandable given what we're trying to accomplish. But a major one is honestly managing personalities in between. Because of the cooperative, it has a lot of advantages, but there are so many moving parts and so many moving people that trying to run a business together is just going to be difficult. And, you know, I went into that realizing that, but not understanding exactly what it would look like. And it has been very challenging just to manage, I would say, expectations between the board, the members, the customers, the staff. Everyone's expectations are fluid, and just, yeah, that's a big challenge. So another one I would say is understanding really the best way to apply our resources, specifically in marketing, because marketing is difficult in the first place, and being in a small town, attracting attention and attracting customers and getting out the right message, again, which goes back to expectations, but just knowing like where the best areas to manage our resources to attract the right customers so that we can be sustainable has been a big challenge, and one that we're continually working on. I feel like we do pretty well at social media. We have good presence on Facebook and Instagram, and we just redid our website, and we really got on the ground and out to events for the first like year and a half. But now it's just trying to decide like which avenues. There's so many marketing platforms to choose from. That's been a big challenge for us. And then of course, just attracting and maintaining employees. We talked about that. We do have funding through the grant, which has been very helpful, but still just attracting people who, you still have to work really hard. You still have to be passionate about the project, and it's hard to find people committed to that, and to train them well and to keep them, in the organization. So we haven't had a ton of turnover, but it's just, that's part of managing personalities, and personality has been a challenge along the way. So I want to talk a little bit about our customers. We attract a pretty steady base. A lot of them are the people who are member owners. And so we do attract a fair number of faculty and staff from the local university, and people who are what I would call, what I just read as values-driven consumers. So they're looking for healthy food and for local food. And I think it's natural that we would attract them first, and be able to kind of keep them around. And then also people with specific food allergies, food issues, that are looking for either things they can't find in a big grocery store or would be a pain to find somewhere else. So they'll come and they know that like they can ask us, and we'll do our best to get it in our store and really listen to them. So that's a lot of our customers. We're seeing more and more students from the university just kind of drop in, and one of the marketing challenges I'm working on is how to attract more students. I did have a girl in the other day he said, I just found this place and now I'm obsessed with it and you'll see me all the time. And she was like, and people will take videos and post them for us on social media, and that makes me happy. But really reaching out to them and explaining like how important this is for our community has been, is one of the main pools that we're trying to attract now, another customer base, I should say. And then I want to end by talking about how the community itself has been involved and continues to be involved in our cooperative. So I did mention before that we started in August of 2017. We actually held open meetings for over a year and a half. So we had a lot of people come. In January of 2018, we really kind of got it down to what we call our transition team, the people who really started planning and deciding like who's going to do which parts, what do we need to get done, what's the business plan look like. Just there's a lot of moving parts, and so we ended up with right around 10 people who would come every week. We met on Tuesdays, and then we incorporated and got down to and developed a board of directors in April of 2018 and continue to meet. We meet all the time. I feel like it's crazy, but also helpful. And so I just feel like there have been so many talented people who have generously offered their time, and everything from manning booths. We started from the beginning. We've been over at Frostburg State. Anytime they have something that sounds relevant to the co-op, they'll invite us and we'll go set up a table and just talk to people. And community events. We have the Evergreen Heritage Center. We have the Allegheny Farmers Markets. We've set up at farmers markets for a lot of the times over the last 2 years. First to say, like, we want to start a business, and then to say, hey, we have a store, come check it out. And we were actually able to sell our to-go foods there for a while as well. That's just been another thing to keep track of. So we're working on that for the next season. And then we had people, I mean, the place that we decided to rent is great. It's on a corner right in downtown. But it was a taco shop, and so we just had a lot of volunteer days to clean it, basically. And we've had volunteers from the beginning, really establishing community connections. So we've had everyone on our board and our transition team, from a former city commissioner to a professor of sociology, and all bring very unique perspectives and skills. And so that's the part I find most rewarding, is just working with such a dynamic set of people. And I often feel the odd one out, but I bring connections to the elementary schools and just a different perspective as well, having a young family, and my husband works at the university. So that's been really fun to get to know people here and to discuss it those ways. So I want to finish by mentioning 2 organizations that have been vital to us. The first is called Frostburg First, and it's a nonprofit that is focused on developing downtown Frostburg itself. And so the connections they make with between us and other downtown business owners have been vital to our success. And then, of course, our local food council. We have the Western Maryland Food Council, which is actually how I got involved with this webinar specifically. And it has been amazing to just connect with people who care about these issues. And the purpose of the Food Council is to make sure, like, we know what's happening around us, and we're not all trying to do the same thing in separate places, that we can work together. And that's the same with this food policy, and a lot of these things is like, what ideas are people having? What are they actually doing? And how can we work together to accomplish more? And so I'm just really grateful for both those organizations, the people I've met there, and for this chance to experiment with a cooperative in a rural town. So thank you. I think that's me. Thanks.
Thanks, Jenny. And so if anyone's driving on Interstate 68 and you want to take a detour to visit Wholesome Harvest, I recommend it. I have shopped there before. We're going to turn it over to Gloria now. Gloria, we're going to show our slides, right? So we've unmuted you, and we'll get your slides up here in just a minute.
Thank you. And thanks for the help with the slides. Okay, I'm almost intimidated by following Jenny and Rial and everybody else, because the ideas that I've heard have already gone off another page. So thank you very much for allowing me to participate, and also allowing me to learn. Catawba Farm and Food Coalition was started about 10 years ago, when, as a business owner and a new person in this community, I saw an absolute need for local foods. I was moving from Boulder, Colorado, where fresh farmers markets, food, the idea of local food, all of it was just everyone's sort of top of the mind awareness. And in this area, I was shocked when we moved here not to find anything going on. Luckily, I hooked up, as they say, with someone named Ben Boyle from Clemson Extension, who had the same attitude and concerns that I did, and we started something called Catawba Farm and Food Coalition. Our main challenge when we started was we thought it would be a year-long project to solve the problems of the world. Obviously, 10 years later, we're still working on it, and I don't know if we'll ever solve all the problems of this local food market. With that in mind, let me go to slide number 2. We cover 5 counties plus the Catawba Indian Nation, which is the only recognized federal Indian tribe in South Carolina. we picked this area because 4 of those counties are considered by various federal groups distressed, to say the least. We're strike force, where you name it, we come under that category. In Chester County alone, we have over 65% of the food people on food stamps here, or SNAP, I should say. We also have a lot of empty land. We are just south of Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a growing urban metropolis almost. As part of a group, we found out that Mecklenburg County, where Charlotte is located, will by 2027 will be 97% covered, and so their land is going as far as agriculture is concerned, and we have a lot of land here. We also have a lot of unemployment, and with that, we said, how do we solve the unemployment? We solve it through local agriculture. How do we solve nutrition? We solve it through agriculture. So it just seemed very simple to have a sustainable food system developed in this area that could supply the Charlotte market, could supply the local folks, as well as to reach across the state of South Carolina. Go ahead. We have 4 main issues in our nonprofit: producer and consumer education. When we started this, I was appalled to find that some of our farmers were actually on food stamps. That was mainly an issue of education for them, how to price, how to market. We are challenged here with very low usage of the web because we don't have that access. So it's coming, but it was a real challenge. Plus consumers, we found that there was a big attitude in this area of the drive-through window menu, which we went, wait a minute, folks. In South Carolina, we only grow 6% of our food, or up to 10, some people say. What's going on here? So we started talking in the community, and we developed some educational programs to help with this, because as everyone involved in the local food movement knows, not only is it nutrition, but it is also an, oh, excuse me, I forgot to turn off my phone. Okay, there it goes. It's now off. I apologize. So we've developed education. We have developed programs for farmers to learn how to do QuickBooks, how to go on the web, etc. We've also developed programs for sales and marketing and agribusiness development. How do you develop business when you don't have a business background if you're a very small farmer? So that's been exciting as well, and also participating in the New and Beginning Farmers program that's going on here in the state. Policy and planning has been the stepchild. Frankly, we're so small, we've been running everywhere we could, trying to get things done. And then we realized, wait a minute, even our local counties don't use local food when they have a meeting. Our local counties don't have awards for our local farmers, even though agriculture is the 2nd largest business. Well, talk to some, the largest business in South Carolina. So there are a lot of issues in policy and planning that we're trying to work with. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So the workshops, for example, High Tunnel, that was a lot of fun. We found out the USDA was also funneling some of those High Tunnel workshops. Small scale poultry production. It's amazing how many chickens can lay eggs that are organic and high priced in the Charlotte market. And how do you sell wholesale? How do you package? How do you ship? How do you meet all the criteria? We also have a community garden adjacent to our facility where we actually are teaching people to grow their own vegetables and food. And a couple of them have actually joined and have started as a business person in sustainable agriculture. Okay, next. With that in mind, as I said, we have a lot of things going on. The regional Farmers Market Managers Network is really interesting for me. It's a chance for the local farmers market managers to get together and share their problems, which are many. As most of you know, farmers market managers are not paid $400,000 a year to run their market and share many of the problems of how do you deal with individuals who are misbehaving at the market? How do you make sure that your market meets all of the state requirements? All of those things. So the network has proved very helpful. And then we decided that from a retail standpoint, beside farmers markets, because transportation is such a problem in our 5 counties, there's no bus network, etc. We would go online, and we laughed and said, Google, watch out, here we come, when we decided to do this. We found a software company that specializes in online farmers markets. The farmers go on the farmers market site, they put their pictures of their produce, they price what they want. I warned some of them that if they priced their tomatoes at $1 million, they probably wouldn't sell many, but they could do that if they wanted to. And so we have the online farmers market selling in both retail and wholesale. With that in mind, we decided that as a mom myself, I hated those PTA projects where you had to go sell cookie dough and magazines and all that stuff with my 3 kids. So we have formed a trial program to boost the retail sales through PTA, excuse me, with a local PTA, which allows the PTA to make money, and we deliver to drop-off spots to their parents. And that's been quite successful. Everybody needs a dozen eggs a week, and a few pennies to the PTA adds up. We also have formed, after 2 years of work, a statewide food network. The reason we did that is that we're short of farmers. Also, we have different climate zones in our state. I'm sure some of you have been to Charleston, South Carolina. Beautiful. They have tomatoes in the April, May. We have tomatoes all the way through October. So if you're in the tomato market, it's nice to have the whole gamut of availability. So that's working pretty well. We've had a couple of sites drop out, but we have this van that's pictured here on our site, refrigerated van running across the state, picking up and delivering fresh fruits and vegetables from over 400 farmers by the time you count all the farmers with the different networks. All right, go ahead. This is a picture of what we're working towards. What we want to have, and I learned these words from various people much smarter than I am who are used to working with food hubs. You need nodes. Nodes will allow farmers to come and drop their stuff off, and then one truck or individual can bring it to your hub. We hope to establish our food nodes at Clemson University offices because every county has an office. We've put a refrigerator in 2 counties experimenting with this so that if someone brings in cheese or eggs or something that needs to be, or meat that needs to be refrigerated, it's there until it's picked up. So wish us luck on this because right now it's very harem-scarum, and I would consider it one of the problems is our delivery system. Okay, go ahead. Here is what we ultimately hope to happen, crisscrossing the state so that all the state farmers have the availability for every customer. You can see there's a couple of vacant areas. These are areas that we hope to establish another food hub and be able to swap with these folks. Grow Food Carolina in Charleston is the grandfather hub for South Carolina. Swamp Rabbit is an interesting situation, and I thought about your food co-op. They are a store right on the Swamp Rabbit Trail. So it's actually a destination spot, which makes it great. People can go there, pick up a bike and go on the 21-mile trail or pick up a sandwich or pick up fresh sausage or whatever. And they also are linked into the farmers in their area as well as North Carolina. So we have access to that. Let's go to the next. Agribusiness development, as you can see, our sign is tilted a little bit there, but we decided that we needed a site to sort of put our flag in the ground. We were able to build a share use kitchen. We thought farmers would use it, but that's not proving true. Farmers are building farms. They're busy being farmers. However, we've gotten a lot of interest from food entrepreneurs. What we found is the main barrier to being a food entrepreneur and coming out with the latest barbecue sauce is the cost of that kitchen. So being able to rent a fully approved DHEC, that's what it is here in South Carolina, kitchen and have business guidance while you're doing it from a local university is proving to be an interesting experiment, and I think it's working. It also gives us the opportunity to be able to use the kitchen with a large building that we were able to save so that we can rent out the building for additional cash, which is always a problem for any nonprofit volunteer organization. We also hold the farmers market there. It's the home of the food hub and the garden. Okay, next. Policy and planning, yeah. Comprehensive planning, we have a regional policy council that we're very grateful for. We have a state group that we're grateful for. And what we're looking at now is what does our community really believe in? We have found one problem that when you say policy council in this area, people assume you're a politician and they run the other way. We have to sort of rebrand and come up with another name because our people are saying, no, we don't want to be involved with going down to Columbia and lobbying. So we're working on that aspect. All right, next. These are some of our partners. I'm sure you've seen some of these before. One of the partners that we just allied ourselves with last year, and I recommend this to everyone, is the AmeriCorps Vista program. If you don't know about Vista and AmeriCorps, if you are a volunteer organization, I really suggest that you look at it. They will supply you the possibility, if you post your jobs correctly on their website, of a certain number of volunteers that will come. They are considered federal employees. They're paid $1,000 a month, and at the end of their 1 year commitment, they are given a $6,000 check, which can be used to pay off student loans or anything they want it for. DHEC is also proving to be a good partner because they keep us legal. They make sure that we have our meat handler's license and that our kitchen meets all requirements for other states because we are so close to North Carolina. All right, next. This is our team. Some farmers, some business people, some volunteers. We do a lot and we enjoy it. This is our old building. It was a carriage shop from built in 1904. It was due to be bulldozed. We rescued it, we restored it, and we have a lot of fun here. So I think that's pretty much it. As far as retail, just a couple of details. People order off the web. We have drop-off spots for people to go there and pick them up. We deliver once a week. The market is open 24/7. So if a lady who is a bank teller and has 3 children who are playing soccer and all on Saturday when the farmers markets are open, she now has a farmers market to go to, which is proving to be really a help to a lot of people. Unfortunately, we cannot take a SNAP card. The federal government has not worked out how that could happen. We were extremely disappointed about that and hope that that will be solved soon. We volunteered to be a guinea pig, but that didn't work out. So we have not met one of our real goals of addressing the food deserts and individuals in South Carolina who have special needs as far as financial are concerned. This has been one of our biggest disappointments and one of our continuing goals of how do we do this, how do we do this, how do we do this, because we're circling back to complete our mission. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Gloria. That was great. We have a number of questions, so I'm going to start out with one. And Rial and Isabelle, this I think is for you. And the question is, how would you characterize the landscape of rural grocery stores to inner city corner stores? Do you believe some of these strategies could be applied to urban low access food areas?
Great, that's a great question. And actually, we have heard that question a lot and have realized that, and there are several resources available that talk a little bit about the similarities between rural food access and urban food access, and that some of the challenges really are similar. Those can be seen in the challenges that we see with distribution to rural grocery stores as well as urban stores. A lot of times rural and urban stores are both smaller than a traditional grocery store, so there are challenges really delivering to a small store, unloading at a small store, things like that. Do you have anything else to add to that as well?
Well, one of the things when we talk about our Kansas Healthy Food Initiative, we showed a quick slide of the partners on that. And one of our partners that provides consulting is the Food Trust out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And they have some wonderful resources and have been working in that space for quite some time. So we had a visit there last year, and it was really interesting to us to see how some of those same challenges are faced by those corner stores as our rural grocers are facing.
And I will just note too that we're hosting a webinar at the end of November that will be on urban retail models, sort of the companion to this piece. This question is for Wholesome Harvest. So Jenni, the question is, how many members do you have? And then you mentioned USDA funding. Do you have a target number of members needed to function and break even?
So right now we have 185 members in our cooperative, and over the life of the grant, our target is 500 members, just to kind of, and that's really a baseline, but we're still working towards it. Yeah.
And then are your income and expenses break even?
Not quite. We had a loss the first year, and we're working towards fixing that the second year. It is really hard with low profit margins, and yeah. So.
Okay. Oh, so can we do this one? Okay, so we're having an issue with the Zoom being stuck. So maybe pop into the chat box. Heather, you have a question for the Catawba market, and you said something about the online farmers market, but we can't rule down. So if you are still on the call and you want to put the question in the chat, that would be great. And in the interim, Gloria, this is a question for you. Can you provide more detail regarding how your drop-off delivery system, for the 24-hour period actually works?
Sure. When you order, you can order all 7 days a week, as I said. The farmer gets a notification of what you have ordered. You may be ordering from 10 or 15 different farmers. You're ordering the products that you want. When that happens, the farmer gets a notification, and they have pledged that nothing will be prepared or picked or whatever more than 24 hours in advance. So Wednesday starts the clock for the farmer. The clock then ticks, and Thursday morning all food is aggregated in one spot. With possibly having 20 different farmers, you can imagine for an order, you need to put them all in one box, all right? Because the customer wants one box to pick up, doesn't want 20 boxes to pick up. With that in mind, we then take them to the drop-off spots. We decided that we would go with local businesses who are locally owned as our drop-off spots. For example, one is Tega Cay Pharmacy in Tega Cay, South Carolina. Tega Cay is owned by a wonderful woman. She's an independent pharmacy. We put in a what I call Pepsi Cola refrigerator, so it has a glass front. We drop off by 2 o'clock on Thursdays. So from 2 to 6, individuals come in and out of her store to pick up their stuff that they have ordered from us, whether it's eggs or apples or tomatoes or beef or whatever. At the same time, she has seen, one, an increase in her business because, gee, if you're there, you might as well pick up your pills or a bottle of perfume for a gift. So it's worked out very well to support the local individuals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. And Jenni, or this is to all panelists, I think. So, but I think this is also Wholesome Harvest. I'm interested in how Wholesome works with the online farmers market. Is it through the same site portal, or is it separate? And do folks buying Wholesome get a discount for bulk purchasing?
That may be a question for me because it says online.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I think that's for Gloria. That's my dream. That's our goal.
That's an interesting question. Retail works swimmingly well. It's just finding enough customers to keep it going every day. Wholesale with chefs has proved interesting. The farmers can put their price, and of course wholesale, because of bulk, is always going to be cheaper, and we've had to do a lot of education for that. So a box of tomatoes will be cheaper than one tomato, which is logical. But chefs, and we deliver to 42 chefs in Charlotte, North Carolina, chefs don't like ordering from the web. It's too big a website, has too many products, takes too much time. They like text, and we had to be slapped to realize that. So we have all of our vegetables, including from the hub and locations, on an Excel spreadsheet. Then we text the chef, pop the sheet to them, they pop it back, and is quite quick and saves them time. They did not like going on, they like to go look when they're at home or when they want to order for retail, but for their business, time is money, and there's too many products often on the website for them to fiddle with.
Great, thanks.
We have a two-way communication system, the website as well as through a simple spreadsheet.
Thank you. So just because our Q&A box is frozen, if you have questions in the bar that we didn't get to yet, because we can't see them, so go ahead and pop them into the chat, which some people are already doing. This is a question for all panelists. Can you talk more specifically about how you partner with local schools and what events or programs seem to be successful in your experience? And so, and Rial and Isabelle, you could talk about it from a perspective of, you know, the groups that you've worked with that you know have done partnerships with schools.
May I start off with that since I mentioned schools?
Yep.
Okay, unfortunately in South Carolina, we cannot sell directly to schools unless there's certain certification that our small farmers have found too expensive. Plus they're already selling their stuff, excuse me, so why bother to go through all of that? That's one thing that would be a great thing for the Food Policy Council to take on. In South Carolina, it is up to the individual district, but because of liability and everything else, they won't break ranks and buy directly. So we don't have that. The only way we can work with schools is with the parents.
Great, thanks.
If I can just mention, this is something I want to work on, but in Maryland, there's already a program through the government called Maryland Farm to School. And so they work with, mostly through the University of Maryland Extension Center, who is heavily involved in the Food Council. So anyway, we're working on us helping more farmers get into schools, but they actually have a website, and they have programs where they will teach children. In fact, like in kindergarten, they go plant seeds with them, and they take field trips to the local farmers market, which is literally 1 block away from our store. And so it's wonderful to see like children going and being able to ask farmers, like, did you grow this? What is it? How do I eat it? Things like that. And I'm just really excited to see positive education for local food and to see kind of what opportunities that will open for the co-op. And so yeah, that's how we don't do that yet, but I want to get involved. And I think it's very easy because it's already established in our state. In fact, I just found a website that talks farmers through how to approach the buyer of a cafeteria and like how to present yourself and how to get a contract basically with them. So that's something I want to, in our education, maybe work with farmers and say like, yes, this is how it would work. Let's try it, that kind of thing.
And in Kansas, that is a function of the Kansas State Department of Education. So they have a farm to school program with materials that local districts can use and local farmers can use to exactly what Jenni was talking about, how to approach those conversations with the cafeteria and get on the list. So they do quite a bit of outreach and engagement with local schools. And I know that the city of Lawrence in Douglas County has quite a robust farm to school program.
Thanks, everybody. Next question, this is for Gloria. How did you finance the rehab of your building?
Beg, borrow, steal. No, in all seriousness, we qualified for a grant from the USDA for rural development, and we had in-kind donations from a lot of individuals. For example, the building is fairly large, and I went to a gentleman that sells metal for roofs and asked him for a free roof. He sat in his chair for quite a while, looking at me as if I was insane, as if I were insane. But the rule is first talks loses, so I kept quiet, and he said, would green work, green metal? And he happened to have had a contract that fell apart, so we got a free roof, and he supplied someone to put it on. So beg, borrow, steal, that's how we got the funding.
Great. We've got about 6 minutes left. There's a question, this is also for you, Gloria. When how is Food Hub aggregating paid for? This is to all panelists actually, so not just Gloria. So if anyone else has something to offer there.
The way we pay for it, okay, is the farmer pays for it. We charge 20% to the farmer to run the program for them. And we encourage them to raise their prices. We were having farmers selling tomatoes for a nickel a pound. So to encourage them to pay, they feel like we're a real bargain because we're bringing in more money than they were asking for. As far as the Food Hub's concerned, if I sell to another Food Hub, it's 15% that costs to the farmer, and then that Food Hub is then responsible for marketing that food at whatever price they can get. And that's what we've told the farmers. You set your price. If it's $1, that's wonderful. If it's not, okay. But if we can sell it for $10, then we will try to do that to support ourselves. And they've all agreed to that. And they feel it's fair.
Great. Thanks. Anybody else have something to offer there in terms of the? No? Okay. So Gloria, this is also, well, it is to Gloria. When aggregating retail food orders, do farmers deliver their produce to a central point on delivery days, or do you pick up on their farms? And have you had any issues with this?
Lots of issues in all aspects. Farmers do deliver their produce to from two of the counties to spots. We then take it to one central location and repackage it. Some of the farmers, when they don't get a large enough order to cover the cost of gas, then they're going to bulk. So when we have those type of farmers, we suggest they partner with their neighbor to bring in what they can. We only sell USDA processed frozen meat because we do cross the state line, and that's a federal law. So we are able to keep meat and cheese for a little bit longer. So some of those come in on what I call off days. But it's always a problem to get, if you have 50 orders from 75 or 80 different locations and you have to get them to one spot, patience and large doses of, I'll just say patience are required.
Thanks. So there's no more questions from the audience right now, but I do have one question, and we'll just use this as the final question since we've got about 3 minutes left. So I just, over the listserv, somebody mentioned this book called Grocery Story, which was about, it just came out, this guy, I'll send out the link to people, but I've been reading it, and in there, he describes in the, I believe it was like 50s and 60s, there used to be policies in place, both at the state and municipal level, that favored local commerce. And so my question is, and this is for everybody, like, are you encountering any policies that have made it easier or more difficult to operate your businesses? And just in terms of, for Rial and Isabelle, like what have you seen in terms of the different groups that you've been providing technical assistance to? So why don't we start with Rial and Isabelle?
One of the things that we have seen is a recent interest in rural revitalization at the legislative level in Kansas. And while we do not have a final report to give on that, we have noticed that those are some of the questions that come up, is what are the barriers that are making it difficult for this to occur? And we were in a meeting recently that talked about how cooperatives are formed. And so that is something that is on the radar and that people are talking about, how that may be a barrier to entry.
And I would just touch on this kind of bridges or brings back to some of the earlier questions around distribution, and share that in Kansas there are not a ton of grocery distributors, and so the distributors that exist have some policies that sometimes make it difficult for the really small grocery stores to get food. And so that could be in the form of a weekly minimum that the distributor has, or it could be in the form of some sort of membership to that distribution company. So I think that we've seen some adaptations that grocery stores specifically have done to maybe work together with other stores to have one order that works for maybe 2 or 3 stores. But I think that would be an area for us to explore as far as policy that could help improve the distribution channels for grocery stores in especially rural Kansas.
Great, thanks. Jenni, how about you?
I'm going to agree. I would say that rather than government policies, it's more personally for our store about distribution and trying to get both sides, because there are minimums we have to meet to get food on our shelves that attracts people, but then our mission is to support local farmers, and so to distribute the money between all of that, try to be fair and make margins. I feel like all the policies make sense for the companies that are setting them, but it makes it very hard for a rural grocery store to establish itself and to be sustainable, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. Thanks, Jenni. And Gloria, how about you?
Well, we're a capitalistic society. That's what's made us great. If a distributor doesn't make money, that distributor, unfortunately, is not interested. We have a huge problem here, since our state is actually, the entire state almost is a food desert. Small grocery stores can't buy an 18-wheeler worth of soap or whatever they need. So it's a huge problem, and I don't see it being solved anytime soon, frankly. We go to the distributors and ask them to buy local, and most of them, Cisco, U.S. Foods, all those folks are very interested in buying local because that's the end thing, but they also don't want to pay for it. So it's a catch-22. And, the simplest way that we have found is the Whole Foods of the world are a little more cooperative, but they still don't want to pay what the farmer needs. So it's an interesting problem to try to get the food distributed. It's huge.
Thanks, Gloria. So thank you all. It's been great to hear you and to hear all the stories. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I think it went very well in terms of like the content. Thanks to the participants for joining us. Rial, Isabelle, Jenni, and Gloria. We will be in touch and we'll make sure to send out the recording probably early next week with a bunch of the different resources. And also if people have other examples or models that they have encountered and they want to send to us, we're going to be pulling together just a document that has some other models that had come up that people talked about. So you can just see kind of a variety of things that are going on around the country. So hope everybody has the rest of a good day, the rest of their day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's just locked, huh?